Hi there.
Hello,
Chris.
Chris.
Morning. Afternoons. Uh, Evening. Right, note taker. Hi, friends.
Hi, Clive.
Yeah.
Hi,
Good
Jeff.
morning. Yeah. Good morning, Sev.
Seth. Seth.
Sev, that's it. Sev. Uh, it's 7 a.m. for you now, isn't it, Sev? I can't hear you, Sev, actually. I think you might need to unmute or something. Can hear the others. Ah, there's John
Hi,
McDonald.
John.
Good. You look happy there, John.
I'll better change it. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's the wrong photo, sorry. Yeah.
Come on, John. It's not 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. anymore.
No, it's
Ah,
not.
there you are.
That's better.
Good to see you, John.
I'll get something to write on. Just a moment.
Okay. Right. And right, so let's
Hello, Paul.
morning, Alf. I mean, good evening, Alf. Right. So we've had the
You're
Aussies
still in
there.
this country, aren't you, Clive?
What's that?
You're still in this country, aren't you? Evening?
I am, yes, I am. Well, not quite because I've just been asleep and I'm only just woken up. I'm still in the land of Nod here. Uh, so anyway, so let's get going. There's no time for that, is there? So, so this is agenda, and what do we want to talk about today in the NOAC meeting?
Yeah.
I've got a little ray of sunshine on my nanobubbles.
Aha,
So
right,
yeah, a couple of minutes on that.
right. Nano
Nano,
bubbles.
it's
Yeah,
basically a single nanobubble
that's
effect.
That should do it. One nanobubble. That should save the world.
But one nanobubble can have mega results.
That's
Ah,
good news.
okay, right.
Does it self-replicate?
The
Maybe it
power of
does.
one.
Right. So nanobubbles update. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Sev.
How about another one, Clive?
Mhm.
Using moon dust to cool the planet Earth.
That sounds like a moonshot idea.
It is. It's a
Oh,
big one.
That's gonna
have huge energy penalty, isn't it?
No, there's energy already on the moon that we can use.
What was this? To cool the planet, not for update.
Yes,
Cool.
yes. Instead of using SAI in the atmosphere to actually use the available moon dust to launch a veil over the Earth and cool the Earth by 1 or 2 degrees. I posted this idea on X recently. I'm getting a bit of feedback on it, so I can share a screen on that. I'll show you a few ideas.
Parasol.
It is.
Parasol.
It is basically. Yeah. We go to it now. We wait till we come back.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's it there. Okay. Uh, what else?
Uh, I don't have a topic of my own, but if Chris would possibly indulge us, I was very interested as I emailed to him in a paper called The Biogeochemistry of Marine Dimethyl Sulfide. And I tried to understand it. I got as far as I could, but it does seem an important paper.
You happy to summarize that paper,
I
Chris?
think to Clive as well.
You
Clive
did. Yeah.
and friends.
Yeah. I mean, I can. It kind of inspired me to get back into action, get going again. I've been anyway distracted. I did create a where is it? So I created a summary on the paper.
Oh, did you? Did you? Right.
So
Sorry, I missed
yeah,
that.
and then added to a lot of things to it because this is what we're doing. This is
I
what
know.
Franz and myself and Paul Stansel are doing. Paul doesn't, he thinks these meetings are too much chat and not enough hard scientific progress in these meetings, but I do anyway. So, but he's doing jury service. So, I wish it would come up. So, I mean, I could try and find that, but I think I'm going to need to look now. So let's just see. I have a whole structure here of people. It might have been. I might put it in
Someone
my own
called
one.
Hopkins.
Beg your pardon?
It was by someone called Hopkins was the lead author,
Hopkins.
Hopkins.
if I
Yeah.
remember rightly.
Yeah. Actually, so here it is. I found
Francis
it.
There you go.
Hopkins, Stephen Archer, Thomas Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Hopkins. Biogeochemistry of marine dimethyl sulfide.
Biogeochemistry of marine dimethyl sulfide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paper is cycling of gas, key points, climatic importance. I mean, basically, I can read through this stuff. DMS is derived, key biological genetic advances, atmospheric fate, uncertainties and modeling challenges, global DMS flux estimates very widely. There we go, 9 to 40 teragram. So this teragram stuff I always find that's million tons basically. For an engineer, that just seems strange. Teragrams. It's million tons.
Our unit, isn't it, Clive?
It's a what? It's SI
The
unit.
SI unit.
Our
Grams
unit.
are the SI unit, so everything
Yeah,
else
fair
has to go by.
Right. Well, okay. There we go. So, yes. So you have to do what you're told, even though it doesn't mean much. But I suppose it means what scientists are very familiar with this. Teragrams, they, that means something to them, just like ounces mean something to people in the
I
community.
think you're right. It's million tons.
Yeah, it is. It is. You can look at it as million tons as well. Anyway, so right, so
Yes.
sulfur is. So it gives, as an engineer, it gives, I don't know, it gives me more of a feel for sulfur. So there we go. And so the amount of sulfur getting into the air every day, or every year, per year rather, well, and every day, determining our climatology, Earth system models, crude proxies, future research priorities. Do you remember we discussed the claw hypothesis? This is what's his name? James Lovelock's theory about the Gaia being self-regulating, which
How about the anti-claw hypothesis,
right, yeah, thank you,
proposed
Brian.
by Lovelock just a decade later?
Right. So saying that actually in terms of clouds, I can't remember what this stands for now, it's claw. But
I agree
basically
with Robert, Chris. It should be
I don't think-
kilograms.
it should
I
be
think-
what?
Kilograms.
I
KMS.
think his claw hypothesis
Right, so anyway,
was right. Yeah.
well, but it's getting warmer and the clouds are getting less, Franz. So we've got a feedback process. So anyway, they are related. They are connected, but at least that way. So anyway, so this is just meant to be putting something on the. So I said I'd do it. So that's Alf suggesting review of Hopkins paper on TMS, on biological DMS.
First name.
Yep. Morning, everyone else that's just
Hopkins.
joined recently.
First name.
Morning from Australia, Robert Tulip, Brian. It's amazing we have 4 people from Australia arriving at 7 a.m. And
I'm in California.
Oh, you're back in California. Okay. Are you
For a
permanently
month.
back, Brian?
No, I'm back for Climate Week next week in San Francisco.
Okay. Righto.
Yes.
Just jetting around. Yeah. Well, as needs must. Right. Okay. So, hi, Ron Byman as well. What else? This is, have we got anything? Let's have another juicy question, please.
Which Hopkins? That's the first name.
Can you remember, Alf?
Hello?
Can you remember Hopkins? The
Yeah,
first name?
the paper's called The Biogeochemistry of Marine Dimethyl Sulfide.
Right.
Authored by
Francis
who?
Hopkins, Stephen Archer, Thomas Bell.
Who Hoskins? Hopkins?
Francis.
Francis.
Francis, got it. There you go.
Frances.
Francis. Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else?
I'd actually quite like to talk about marine algae oil potential.
Sure.
Can you turn up your volume, Robert, by any chance?
I'll have a look.
Okay. There is, I think you mean growing more algae. I mean, oil comes from algae that died millions of years ago, or
Can we rephrase that as marine algae for biofuels?
Yeah, how about that?
That biofuel is fine, yeah.
Okay, that's clearer. Those are two different, subtly different things. That's fine.
Yeah, makes it clearer.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's all right.
I've got a topic.
Yeah.
With the price of oil, the price of urea fertilizer has doubled in recent weeks.
Mm.
And now we're going to have fertilizer shortages across Eurasia. So the question is, can we get seaweed biostimulants to replace and displace fossil fuels in fertilizer applications across Eurasia?
Eurasia
It's going to be a food crisis across 2/3 of the globe.
Has doubled. Let's just say.
Are you actively pitching anywhere?
Yes, I'm pitching at in 2 hours to a venture capitalist here in Silicon Valley.
Good.
I've got a dozen slides to support it. So if people want to see you're only allowed. I'm told by Rebecca you're only allowed 8 slides.
Right.
So I'm down to 15. You guys can help me cut the rest of them.
Okay.
Well, I'd certainly be interested in your pitch.
Yeah. Let's see your pitch, Brian. Yeah, and then we can think about what else not to have. So what? Sorry, what are you calling it here?
Biostimulant, seaweed biostimulant.
Biostimulants.
I say displace most fossil fertilizer. That's more accurate. I don't think it can go to 0, but our results so far
displace most fertilizer.
Most fertilizer, yeah.
Seaweed is used as a fertilizer in some parts of the world, particularly in some bits of Scotland.
Yeah, the solids. I think there is a benefit to the solids as well as liquids. So there's multiple uses.
The whole coast of Norway is involved with farming seaweed for fertilizer.
Nice. Very local uses, and that's a good thing as well.
Right. Anything else? Because I think that's probably enough to discuss.
Brian, this is Ron.
Hi, Ron.
I'm just wondering what people's reaction to this the post by Tom Harris and Mike. I know many of you, me included, signaled that we thought they were thoughtful. It was a good discussion, but Harris raises this anyway. Mike and I are something that will be out shortly for all of you guys to look at and comment on or revise. But I'm just curious, what people think of that whole. Harris says that there's a limit, there's a time limit essentially for SAI. So it sort of adds another, point of urgency to get this going as quickly as possible. In other words, it can only cool for so long. And if we miss that, then, we're kind of cooked and or something by that
I missed
time.
that one.
Anyway,
all right.
Something Mike added. Yeah, go ahead.
I might have missed that.
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah. So there was a
Substack article by Tom Harris.
Good. Where did he post it?
It was in Healthy. It's in the HPAC emails, Brian.
Oh, very good.
I confess I didn't read it, but I saw the reply from Mike McCracken, which was
Ah,
unusually error free. So Mike must have really checked it. Didn't have very few errors in his email. He often rattles them off, doesn't he? But this one was very readable, and I thought extremely sensible. And I wrote a little reply and said, "Well said, Mike." So because I always think draw attention to something important. It's really saying that there needs to be. So I think this is the most important one, Ron. This is what really needs to be discussed. From my humble opinion here, all these are important as well, all good. But this one seems to me the most important thing because this is the issue. Cooling is not getting much traction. We hear it from Herb, talked to Al Gore, and Al Gore said that's not very helpful. But it's the most helpful thing you can possibly talk about is cooling the oceans. So, anything else? So you just want to know what people thought about it, about the Tom Harris post and the reply from Mike McCracken, and you just
Yeah, I
want a
mean,
general discussion of that. Yep.
yeah. I mean,
Yep. I think you're sort of cutting in and out a bit, Ron. Okay, so let's leave it at that then. Okay, that's it then. All right, thank you everyone for your questions. Let's start with Sev for an update. It sounds like quite techy. Please, Sev.
Yesterday, I rather cheekily wrote to Professor Baumberg, who's a physicist at Cambridge University, suggesting that one of his physicists might care to write a letter to the Royal Society on the energy return of a single stabilized nanobubble in the ocean surface. And wonder of wonders, he wrote back saying, "Can you please give me some papers on it?" Which is a wonderful response as far as I'm concerned, both in timeliness and from such a senior bloke. Now, you may recall that our erstwhile friend, Stephen Salter, has said that bubbles in the sea are the inverse of cloud droplets in the air. And by implication, both have a comparable albedo or reflecting effect. So what I did a few days ago was to make some very simplifying assumptions on the basis of a single nanobubble. The energy which it's required, the theoretical energy which is required to generate it versus the amount of solar radiation it would reflect over its putative lifetime in the sea surface microlayer. And Stephen had said, if I recall rightly, that a droplet of cloud could reflect as much as a millionfold or more worth of solar energy as a cloud. So I'm assuming roughly that a nanobubble in the ocean might do something comparable, and that if the physicist were to do these calculations, they're only theoretical and rough and ready, only pen and paper type stuff, that he might well confirm Stephen's hypothesis or estimation that you get more than a millionfold return in energy by the creation of a nanodroplet or a nanoparticle of seawater. And that if this were published in the Royal Society, this might well energize not only other, I've got one researcher who's interested in doing it in a startup in America, but it might energize others to do the same, and indeed to get funding for such a project for Cambridge University, in combination, of course, with my buoyant flakes, which produce the surfactants, which provide that nanobubble with its life extension from minutes to months. So that was a nice little thing, and I'll be chasing that up this morning, and hopefully we'll see something come from it. Any comments?
Yep, from Robert Tulip straight away.
Yeah, so John Macdonald and I had, John was here before, wasn't he?
Yes, I'm still here. Yeah.
Still here, sorry, there you are, John. Had a really good conversation last week about nanobubbles, and especially the concept of using nanobubbles to improve the fuel efficiency of shipping. And so that's potentially a commercial angle in. And it was I found it very interesting that Dan Miller, in his presentation to HPAC, unprompted, came up with the suggestion that nanobubbles are likely to be a more efficient approach than marine cloud brightening, simply because it's much easier to make a bubble of air than to make a small uniform particle of salt. And,
Mitsubishi Heavy Industries are already using microbubbles to lubricate ship hulls, and it's been put on several ships at the moment, and it's improving their economy by between 10 and 12%, I think. So very significant.
Yeah, because the amazing thing is, if you have a container on a ship bow and use it to make nanobubbles that go under the hull, and if those nanobubbles have got iron and algae in them, then it generates essentially a luminous wake for the ship that is highly reflective. And so it's but the essential thing is that if nanobubbles are more efficient than marine cloud brightening as a albedo enhancement technology, then I'm just surprised that there hasn't been a conversation with the scientific community. Like, where are the people in GeoMIP doing work on modelling the impact of nanobubbles? Has there been any computer modelling of nanobubble effects?
Not to my knowledge. The microbubbles they're using on ships at the moment typically last several minutes. So you'd need to have the nanobubbles with the surfactants lasting months, preferably, or behind ship tracks. But yeah.
Loading on ships, though, is just for the ship's purpose, not for anything else. So they're not worried about minutes, presumably.
No, but if you get a double whammy from the investment.
Yeah, but the shipping industry is interested in their economics, that's their main focus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but they probably aren't against doing something good if it doesn't cost them, right?
Yeah, they're basically interested in the logistics of getting from A to B as fast as possible for the lowest cost. So they're pretty hard-nosed. They're like truck drivers, basically. And so if you can do something that doesn't upset their operation and there's no downside, like just installing a container on their ship that can plug into their system, you don't want to do anything in their engine room. They'd be opposed to that. But if it can just be on the deck and bubbling the bow, there's a strong business case just for the fuel economy side. But the benefit of the wake is what we're really on about, obviously. So, but what I'm keen to do is actually extract biosurfactants from the surface of the ocean as the ship's traveling along, using its energy to actually extract those biosurfactants and feed them in parallel with the nanobubbles at the back, on the bow and at the back, so that you're actually, it's a closed loop system. If you can do that, and the fit out of a container is not that expensive, and you can maintain them when it gets back to port. So there's actually a strong business case for all this.
And with the issue that the shipping industry would only pay for the extent to which it improves their fuel efficiency. The the argument that it has a significant cooling return on investment means that it has there's a very solid case for cooling credits and potentially for carbon credits. And part of the issue here is just getting people to recognize that sunlight reflection is a more efficient way of cooling the earth than removing carbon in many cases. And so there's the whole economics, but
Yep.
I would like to see the GM community pick up on the modeling question. And so the fact that there's more interest in it is quite important.
Right. You're cutting out each time, Robert. I think you're saying the GMIP community, General Modeling into
Sure.
Comparison Project. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And just to be clear, this factor of millions, what you were saying, Sev, is the difference between the amount of energy it takes to produce this thing, whether it's a microbubble or a cloud droplet, compared to the amount of energy that then gets reflected away by the sun back out to space. It's something like a million times the difference in the amount of energy that it's involved. So, Greg, please.
Thanks. Well, I was going to ask basically the point you just tried to clarify, which what the million actually means. I mean, the million sounds like an incredible. You say it's a million times better than something else. That's real number. I just would like to have it stated in terms of, I buy or you put up so many solar panels, and what is the million there? Or let's say it versus SAI. You put up a ton of SAI and there's a million factor in more efficiency. It would be interesting to me to hear a little more detail what that million actually means, or how that would come about.
Yeah, that's what it means. The amount of energy in for it's like the return on investment. This is what Tao was talking about a couple of years ago. What's your energy return on investment? Yeah.
Okay, well, let me just ask then. So you can arguably cool the Earth by a degree for, let's just say 50 billion. With that, these are kind of very nebulous estimates for using SAI. Just forget about everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So a million off a million, 50 million, it's $50 to cool the Earth. I'm not getting it. $50 to cool the Earth by a degree.
Well, he was talking about energy return on investment rather than dollars return on investment.
Well, okay.
Talk about how much energy it takes to get this thing working, and then how much energy it then reflects back out to space from the sun.
But energy, they're not unrelated. The cost, we're trying to dump energy out.
Yeah.
And it costs, the more can you relate it? I think that would be a help to people like me anyway. Because if you say it's a million times more efficient energy-wise, it's got to be a pretty hefty factor money-wise.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what Stephen Salter was arguing. He said we don't know the number, but it's the order, about that order, it might even be more or
I guess I'd like to see the back of the envelope calculation.
No, it is correct. I've done the order of magnitude calculation, and Salter was correct with an order of magnitude.
All right.
Well, send me the envelope, please.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, but that's okay. Yeah, that'd be interesting, Brian. Yeah, and Franz and I and this gentleman Paul Stansel he's a professional physicist. That's what he does all the time. He says you must do these calculations, and so we calculated the dollar cost of using current spray technology of cooling the oceans, significantly back, for example, back to zero, back to pre-industrial temperature.
Greg, Stephen's original.
You're cutting in and out, Ron. Stephen's original proposal?
There are references to them in the original HVAC cooling paper. They're on. We
Okay.
put them in Mendeley for archive for historical purchase, so people can track that down.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so it's a lot. The amount of energy it takes to create salt particles using current spray technology is kind of too much. You need all the power of each ship and more. A big, very strong ocean-going like container ship. All that energy that would drive the ship needs to be used to spray particles, because there's a lot of energy to overcome surface tension, which is why what we're working on is producing particles from a reaction of gases together, which is what happens in nature anyway, between sulfuric acid, which comes from DMS, and ammonia, which also comes off the ocean. So these are just gases that come off the ocean. And but we're still working on it and looking for funding. Chris, please.
I'm just thinking, presumably the lifetime of this particle has an influence on that calculation. If it lasts for 5 minutes, it's going to be a different calculation to if it lasts 5 hours.
Yeah.
In terms of the energy return that you get from reflecting, and that's got to be a factor in that calculation.
Oh yeah.
Just integrate over a week. That's how long tropospheric aerosols last. So over 1 week, you can get a reasonable gain factor.
I was thinking nanobubbles rather than the atmospheric particles.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah. Well, if the bubbles last a day or a week, you'd get a similar result.
Yeah. How long did nanobubbles last, Sev?
Up to about 4 months. So they've got them in the lab. They've
see
got
that
them
in the
after
ocean.
6 months, but I reckon that was a bit much.
Okay. And what was that, Brian?
We should see that in the ocean. I'd like to see some field evidence.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Robert, Tulip, please.
There's
look,
one
that
other effect,
hang on a minute. Yeah.
In a cloud, you'll have a lot of droplets occluding others. In the sea surface microlayer, you'll have much less of that occlusion. It'll be pretty much each bubble will be reflecting as much as the full sunlight it receives. Whereas in a cloud, which is zillions of droplets thick, the ones lower down wouldn't be reflecting much at all.
Right. And also with clouds, the reason the whole thing about susceptibility of clouds and best areas being not most of the ocean, it's just certain areas, is because most of the atmosphere, you have other layers of clouds that then they reflect at high level, but they also do a certain amount of warming. Cirrus clouds also reflect sunshine, but they have more of a warming effect. They trap more heat. And so it's only that with clouds that it's not just reflection, it's the overall balance of energy, but it's the total amount of energy reflected versus what's also then trapped by the cloud. And low-lying clouds, because they're much warmer, if you have low-lying clouds and nothing above, this is the most efficient mechanism, because they reflect shortwave, and they're also that much warmer that they emit infrared as well. Quite a lot of infrared that's seen from satellites, infrared photographs. Yeah. Anything else, Brian? Were you saying something else about that before we move on to Robert? Tulip?
No, that's about it.
Yeah. Great.
Well, I was just following up on this point about durability of nanobubbles, and the fact that it's only in the laboratory that the 4 to 6 month lifespan has been shown, and not in the ocean, is something that I find astonishing, because I would have thought that coral reef tourist resorts would have a very clear commercial interest in testing nanobubble technology in order to reduce the temperature of the water in the reef.
Yeah, you think so, wouldn't you? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The Australian Reef Research and whatever it is program ought to look at, RAP as it's called.
I've suggested that they do so. One of the problems with the the coral reefs is that the water in coral reefs is very, very clear because the coral has been eating all the phytoplankton. So you need to introduce other phytoplankton or in the surface or surfactants, natural surfactants, to get that effect. Otherwise, any bubbles created by breaking waves in the coral reefs burst very quickly.
Nanobubbles. Do nanobubbles really burst? But they're so
no,
small.
they don't.
That
But if they're not surrounded by surfactants, they quickly diffuse. All their gas diffuses into the water in probably a matter of minutes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
The beauty of nanobubbles for ocean cooling is it's really like fast cooling. I mean, it's pretty high in terms of safety. I think. It's easy to explain than atmospheric intervention, and it is scalable. It's something that can be very local, as well as using major ships. You can do local intervention just on reefs, just in coral atolls, and there's a lot of marine co-benefits as well. In terms of the health of the reef, there's a lot of. I can't see too many negatives, and I like the way, Sev, you're narrowing it right down, distilling it down to the particle itself and the energy benefit of that, because people can get their head around those sort of concepts probably better than the large scale stuff.
Yeah. But
it's certainly worth exploring more, and it's incredible there's more research. I actually had a meeting with the Department of Environment and Great Barrier Reef Authority a couple of months ago, and they're quite interested in the idea, but they're trying to get funding. Their funding's coming up again in June, end of June, so that's the time to target it.
Yep. Yep. And I had a quick look and found I asked a question of DeepSeek. I find it's just answers very easily. Have nanobubbles been modeled for cooling the oceans? No. Current scientific research on modeling for ocean cooling focus on marine cloud brightening. There we go. Not on injecting nanobubbles. So that's at least one answer there from that. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Hi. Hello, Ursula. We haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I had an evening course
Lovely to see you
that was
back.
running late evening course for a college that I was teaching, and so
Okay.
I'm sorry. And
No, I'm not trying to admonish you. Just saying because we all
it's
have
great to be back.
Yeah, great.
Great to be back.
Thank you for joining us again.
Great to be here.
Yeah, I always think if it's men only and all the women are frightened off, then it's not a good sign. But you're here, so that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Bring some of your friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really need to do that.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful. Right. Okay. Next, next
Actually, worse.
is what's that? Yeah. So next is well, this could go on all night. So we'll have to be careful not to speak too long because it would be good to hear from all these other things here. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so this is what we got. Ron, please, can you just summarize this, and we'll make sure that this gets some airing at least. The post from Tom Harris, please.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully you can hear this. I'm as usual mobile
speak slowly,
here. So,
Ron. Speak slowly. We'll get it. Okay. Yeah.
He's apparently, I think he's an.
You're coming in and out, Ron.
And he wrote a.
Yeah. Keep going. Keep going.
Okay. Well.
I think you might have to adjust your microphone. It's you're just coming and going, Ron.
I haven't.
Or it's a bad internet connection. It's your phone or something.
It's in trouble, but
no, we're not getting enough.
We're not getting enough. All right, thank you, Robert. Yeah, we're not getting enough. So sorry about that, Ron. We just can only hear about 30% of what you're saying, and or 20%. We can't really.
Please, I urge. I would just want to encourage people to check it out.
Right. Yeah.
We'll leave it at that because it's too hard to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've put
Could someone remind me of the basic idea of how of the fact that the cooling time of SAI is limited? What is limiting it? Just that aspect of his solar alarm.
Harris notes that that as the more you put up there, the less effective it is. It gets
Oh, right.
coagulated.
Yeah, it's saturated. Okay.
The particles. Yeah. So
Well,
so there's
just
an
like
upper limit.
Just like what
how
Sev
much.
was saying. Just like what Sev was saying.
Yeah.
I would say.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
fine.
So
That's
all right,
the
Greg.
that's
Let
the
Ron
process.
let Ron just finish off what he's saying, please. Ron?
well that so Harris says, we have a window to do something quickly, and we may lose it if we don't get it started fast. And then in Mike's response, he said, well, we could after a couple of decades, by 2060 is Harris's approximate deadline for cooling. And I mean, that's when the SAI would basically cease to work if we keep ramping up the greenhouse gases at the rate we are, or equivalent. So Mike said, "Oh well, we may have to develop space mirrors." So that's like adds another layer of, for the long run, not for near-term cooling, of course. And of course, that gets me to the moon landing, right? That's why we need a base on the moon. So, our future of human civilization does kind of hang on a very precarious pathway right now, as we all know.
Yeah. I liked what Mike McCracken said. I mean, he just brought it back down to earth and said, when comparing it to the AIDS pandemic, if you can call it that, not really a pandemic, when people were dying of AIDS all the time, and there was a sort of norm of preparing drugs, and people were saying, no, they can't take these drugs because they haven't been approved yet. And Mike was pointing out that people said, look, for God's sake, these people are dying. There's assess the risk of them, they're going to die anyway. Just doesn't it make sense to try these drugs even before they're ready on people who are who are without the drug, they're going to die within the next few months anyway. And I said, oh yeah, okay, let's let them take these drugs. And so they were able to do clinical trials much earlier than otherwise, according to the usual norms. And he said the same thing ought to be applied, the same logic ought to be applied here. And I thought, amen. Robert, Chris, please.
Yeah, I read.
So that's exactly what we're
right. Let Robert, Chris,
that point about decision making.
Sorry, that's Ron. That's the point. That was the point. Let Robert, Chris speak, and we'll come back to you, Ron, please.
Yeah, these medical analogies are made quite often. The chemotherapy one and the tourniquet one, all these, and now this AIDS one. The problem is that they're very emotionally appealing, but they're totally and utterly inappropriate, and they do not map across to the issues associated with climate change. It is a very different proposition for the medical elite and the politicians who are concerned with regulation of medicines to propose that medicines that have not gone through their complete testing phase are urgently required, and therefore we should take the risk of giving them to this particular cohort of patients, because if it goes wrong, the people that die are that particular cohort of patients, the ones that made the decision and made the personal choice to try the drug that wasn't yet fully approved. With climate change, you're talking about a completely different proposition, because here, if you're doing SAI, for example, or indeed any kind of global scale climate intervention, everybody gets affected, whether they approved it, wanted it, or didn't want it, or not. And people in distant locations who don't even know about it will be affected. So the moral equivalence is simply not there. On the one hand, you're dealing with individuals and their concerns. On the other, you're dealing with large populations, and it's a completely different scenario. So whilst I appreciate, the optimism that's associated with that, it isn't going to happen because it's politically untenable.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Robert, I wouldn't say it's completely different because the main logic, there's a certain amount of logic that still applies, but as you say, in practice, it's very different. So anyway, let's not argue. So you're saying it's completely different, and that can stand. Ron, you were trying to say something as well. Ron Byman, are you still there? If you are, we can't hear you.
I could just, yeah, well, very quick. That's exactly what we're the decision making
Decision-making process. Okay.
that we're trying to come up, and we'll send it out to everybody. But Robert, you're absolutely, on point. Well, I mean, they're, very subtle little quibbles and stuff, but yeah, that's what we're trying to say. This is a kind of like a war. We're waging a war. We need to act quickly. We can't, we don't. A drug regime is really inappropriate. And if any of you caught Dan Miller's interview with Doug McMartin, I mean, he just sent it out. I sent out the recording. We got, Dan actually really drew out Doug McMartin on this issue. That, couldn't we do this faster if politicians really realize what the scale of the emergency? Couldn't we do this in 5 years? Start deploying. And Doug said, yeah, if there were social license and funding, then we could go full speed ahead. So that's sort of the difference between deliberate, testing, measuring, reducing uncertainties, and all that. Which I agree. That's what reflective right now is saying, and that may have something to do with funding or whatever. But kind of we're fighting a war. We need to get this out there as fast as possible because the suffering will be much greater if we take a long time.
Yeah,
so that's what we're working on.
One point I want to make here, again, it's a bad analogy, Ron, because in a war, the action you take is intended to kill the enemy. Here, what we're talking about is killing our friends.
Not really.
Well, it is really. I'm afraid it is really, because
we're trying to avoid killing our friends, I think, and other species.
Absolutely not. There is no way that you could implement any kind of global scale climate intervention that did not have some negative consequences for some people. Okay? So there are going to be losers. There are going to be losers. And that is a problem. It's a political problem, a big one.
No, I agree, Robert. But, the cost benefit is the other way, as we've all been saying. It's much worse if we don't do anything than if we do something that has some negative side effects, because we haven't seen any super calamitous side effects from this. So, that's what we're working on.
Listen, I totally agree. If you were approaching this from a rational basis, then what I am saying is rubbish. But unfortunately, that isn't the way the world works. The world and these kinds of decisions are not made on a rational basis, and they're not going to be made on a rational basis. That isn't how the political world operates, I'm afraid. And we need to take that into account.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking in a war, young men get drafted and they go and get killed. But that's a nation making a decision. Here it's the whole world, and we don't have global government.
Oh yeah, no. So that thing is how to do that, and you need a coalition of nations to probably the most likely. It's not going to be some UN perfect, global climate governance. It's going to be more impromptu, like this phase, which again, I think is a good.
I think Phil in say it sounded like space mirrors, which sounded like a good idea. Okay, Ron, you're still cutting out. Brian, please, Brian von Herzen.
Yeah, a billion climate refugees will be a bigger problem that we have to address, and that's with business as usual. There is a precedent in the medical space, and that is a pandemic corps where full prior informed consent, members of an elite corps of trainees would actually volunteer for challenge testing. In the case of local and transparent opportunities for climate repair, we can enlist and offer to put out a request for proposals to communities that wish to lead the way in community-led projects to actually demonstrate tropospheric aerosols. That can be done with natural aerosols, both sea spray and biogenic aerosols, and we're putting together a plan to enable that to happen. So I think there's a great basis for local efforts that are community-led and are diametrically different than any proposals like, or any projects like Alameda that we're not done with consent.
Yeah,
And finally, I'll close by saying no one gives social license. There are a number of organizations and groups that can try to take social acceptance away. But I think the challenge is to create something socially acceptable enough that it can make progress against the headwinds of reactionary forces.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Pleasure.
Put your hand up, John, if you want to speak. Greg, please.
Well, just coming back to Robert Chris's point, I mean, I agree with the point in principle, but the distinction between people opting personally to take a drug that hasn't been approved. But I mean, and I also agree with Ryan that there is a local. The analog in climate intervention would be a local method that could be done that would not affect other people, but those who want to opt in could do it. I agree. I think though that when Robert says this, no way this will happen. I mean, there's unilateral action is the rule rather than exception in global affairs by powerful nations. I mean, just look at Iran. They closed Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody suffers, and it's happening though. Nobody's stopped him because they can't. The rest of the world is subject to that. Now that was a stupid thing, but I mean, well, you can argue which way.
Yeah.
But the point is that unilateral action is the rule rather than the exception. I think Robert's talking about an idealized universe in which opposition actually matters. Opposition matters if you have F-22s, I guess, right? That's my comment.
Yeah. And John Macdonald, please.
Just quickly, it is important to build confidence at a local level before anything is scalable. And so that what Brian's saying is exactly right. You can't expect people to accept big ideas. I mean, we learned the lesson through COVID with vaccinations, which were mandated, and that had positive, but it also had some negative side effects, and it wasn't all positive. So, and it was very much a rushed program, which the people didn't have any say in, basically.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And a lot of this was in Oliver Morton's book, Remaking the World, something like that, Remaking the Planet. And people have said that wars would be started over this if people have suffer negative consequences. Okay, great, thank you. We've aired that one again. Okay, so let's get back to our agenda here. So we have, so you're next, John, please.
So
Moondust,
can I share the screen here? I'll try and share.
Yep, you should be able to share. Tell me if you can't. I've clicked it, so you should be able to. Yep, there we go.
Just go back to this. Now, after saying what I said, I'm just saying the opposite, I suppose, because this is a. Can you see that now?
Yep.
This is obviously a very big idea, but it's not. I mean, it's not totally out of the realms of possibility, but not right now. And but the fact is, the moon could help us to cool the Earth. That we can. The silica dust there is the perfect reflector, and if you can imagine if one Starship rocket could land on the moon, set up a base, and 3D print and self-replicate rovers, which would mine the moon dust using energy from water, ice which has been discovered at the poles of the moon, which would be turned into hydrogen and obviously water for crops and various things. But that would generate an energy source from hydrogen plus solar, and then you'd have launches which would be manufactured on the moon, and they would fire out into L1, and you'd reflect 1 to 2% to cool the atmosphere. You wouldn't be touching the Earth's atmosphere. It'd be very much a manageable approach, which would be able to be switched off at any point. And
sorry, what's L1, John?
L1 is the area
Lagrange point, is it, or something?
There's the point between the Earth and the Moon, which is the ideal spot to create a veil, like I'm talking about. So it's
between the Earth and the Sun, not between the Earth.
Sorry, yes, between the Earth and the Sun, yes. So it's a dust cloud, which is fully adjustable and self-sustaining, and could be built from the Moon now that there's an energy source that's available there. So it's a big idea. It's not wouldn't happen for many years, but as a last resort, could it work? I mean, this is something that would be interesting to do a study of, and people probably have. I haven't fully researched this. I did raise the subject and actually got a Grok to help with these images and asked the question. I said, "Well, can you put this to your boss, to Elon Musk?" And it said, "Well, I don't have direct access, but I do have a team I can put it to." So I said, "Well, go for it." It's something that should be in the public domain. We're not talking about IP or anything here. This is public domain, a big idea, Artemis down the track project, possibly.
Right.
Any thoughts?
So essentially, the space mirror is the dust.
It's a space mirror. Yeah, it's the dust. Yeah. It's SAI, but out beyond the atmosphere. Yeah.
And it's nowhere near the Moon, where it might be mined from the Moon, but then
mined from the Moon, and so
then spread. Yeah.
The Moon becomes our partner in this process.
And then put in a Lagrange point where there's no gravity pulling the dust one way or the other.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it'd be difficult to remove it if you needed to, wouldn't it?
It would disperse. You'd have to keep replenishing it, so it would disperse.
Well, why would you have to keep replenishing it?
Because it's unstable.
Perfectly unstable.
It is unstable. Yeah.
Even at the Lagrange point.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to worry about sandblasting, though. It's
sandblasting.
Yeah, because it's unstable. Those blue arrows are where it's gonna go, and that right blue arrow is pointing towards the Earth. And so you're gonna have
the same with space mirrors. They were going to put them in the same place.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
There'd be like lots of little meteorites coming down on into the Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. 20 kilometers.
Okay, Chris, please. I think your hand went up first.
The University of Strathclyde researched this about 15 years ago. There's several papers, 2010, 2012. I can put the links in the chat if you're interested. They weren't looking at Moondust, but what they were suggesting was to actually get hold of an asteroid and basically blast an asteroid into dust and put that at the L1 point. So the concept is very similar, just a different source of material. But it was all around the L1 point. I'll just put those links in the chat for you. There's at least 3 papers I quickly came across which talked about that.
Okay. And briefly, was it a serious proposal? Was it,
I think so. I mean, serious in terms of it was done as a scientific sort of study.
Was it workable?
I don't think.
Was their conclusion that it was workable?
I imagine it's workable because they talked about the possibility of if you're putting space mirrors up, you'd have to put them in the same place at the L1 point for stability, and so. They figured that would cost an awful lot in terms of energy because you've got to boost them off the Earth and put them all the way out there. Whereas if you generated something either from the Moon or from an asteroid, it would, I guess, be much less energy intensive than that. But anyway, that's I don't know. I'll just put those links in the chat for you so you can see those papers.
It'd be interesting if the trail of an asteroid, the reflection, if any benefit from the trail of an asteroid had been measured as it passed by Earth, whether that would have any effect or not. That would be a real experiment on a smaller scale.
Do you mean a comet, John? Because comets
a comet,
yeah. Usually the tail doesn't cross the Earth's shadow, never get shadowed. But the comment I was going to make is simply that if you're sitting right at L1, the light pressure is going to push it into the Earth's orbit, and then of course the light pressure is going to have an ongoing thrust on those grains of sand, if you will, And the sandblasting effect of anything that encounters these clouds could be devastating at 20 kilometers per second. So I think those side effects need to be well understood as to what the ultimate destination of this dust will be, and if it's going to hit the Earth. Is it going to, affect satellites and things of that sort? Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, satellites. Yeah, absolutely.
L1 is an L1 around 1 million miles out. So, I mean, it's going to disperse quite diffusely by the time it gets anywhere to Earth, isn't it?
I'd hate to have one or two of those micrometeorites hit my spaceship at 20 kilometers per second.
Yeah. A single speck of paint apparently is very dangerous for a manned moon mission or for a satellite.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Franz, please. Franz.
What diameters have these dust particles?
Yeah.
Someone knows.
Does anyone know? A couple of millimeters, maybe, or less?
No, they're very, very fine.
They're very fine, and they have strong reflective properties. But yeah, that needs to be tested, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, what if it was a millimeter, Franz?
Yeah, then they, as Brian said, if you have a millimeter diameter, it may destruct a surface of satellite or so.
Yeah. To me, there's lots of dust in there's when you see shooting stars, that's little bits of dust burning up in the atmosphere, as I understand it. So I think they'd burn up. I don't think it would affect people on Earth too much, or life on Earth. But it seems to me satellites would be, and especially manned, the space station would be in big danger. Robert, Chris, please.
Yeah, just so I'm looking at the moment. I'm not going to find it in time for this conversation, but there was at the Cambridge Arctic Repair Conference last year a quite detailed presentation of a similar scheme that involved putting mirrors at the Lagrange point. But the clever thing there was that they were manageable. They were controllable, so they could turn them up and down as needed. They weren't just sort of stuck there, on their own. They were powered and could be controlled. So this is an idea that's been worked on. It's attractive. Whether or not it'll ever get developed in sufficient time to be of value, to be there soon enough to do what needs to be done, is an entirely separate question, because time is of the essence, as we know. And this is, I don't think this is in the current Overton window, as we often comment.
The breakthrough here is the potential of an energy source on the moon with ice at the poles. That's what everyone's interested in. The Chinese are interested in it as well, and that's plus solar, hydrogen and solar are the secret. And if we can self-replicate with 3D printing, then only one starship needs to actually start the process. This is where this can multiply. That's all. But needs a lot of research, obviously. It needs serious analysis.
Yeah. Okay.
Doug McMartin commented
I put in the chat that Moondust
that's working.
Just a sec, Sev. Let Robert Tulip finish, please. Robert Tulip.
Doug McMartin commented to Dan Miller that space mirrors are too expensive.
Okay.
All right. The payloads of getting normal space mirrors up there would be, but if we can do it with using the mining of the moon, then that may be a different scenario.
They're not too expensive if they're data centers.
All right. Yeah.
Maybe they can put the data centers at the Lagrange point and tilt towards.
For those longer training runs, yes.
Yeah, that's what takes up most of the energy. Yeah.
Reflective data center. Yeah.
Reflective, yeah. Sev, please.
Yeah, I've put in the chat that moondust particles are between 300 and 600 nanometers in diameter.
Medium.
And that's probably enough to destroy most antenna on satellites or spaceships.
Yeah. If there's billions of people dying in famines and we're all at war with each other, well, I mean, I suppose they'll want satellites all the more so that they can, defeat the other side. So they're not going to let their satellites be put at risk. That's what happens. So that's okay. So let's keep going here. So what we have? Okay, urea. Brian, we have three things left. Brian, please. Urea price is
Sure
doubled.
thing.
Yeah.
All right, I've got my dozen slides ready, and what I'll do is run through those briefly and then come back for comments and suggestions as we go. Let's see, application windows. Good. So we're presenting this as Sea Forestation, which is a licensee of marine permaculture from the Climate Foundation. The problem statement is the fuel price has doubled in recent months, and now the urea prices, representing nitrogen fertilizer, have doubled in Eurasia. Actually, this is a global price. So it's astonishing that we're looking at a doubling in the price of the fertilizers used to produce the food that we're eating. And we've got a severe problem to address in terms of food security across Eurasia for now and globally in the near future. So we try to address this by a combination of seaweed ramping production, and the biostimulant, liquid biostimulant, is our first product. This is part of an overall scaling effort. We're halfway to getting, well, we're entering phase 4, and that is scaling from a quarter hectare to a full hectare this year. And that part's underway. Getting to the full hectare. This is a picture of our quarter hectare that's been in the water for several months. The opportunity here is to go from the seaweed production through a biorefinery and produce liquid biostimulants and solid food, feed, and fertilizer supplements. At the same time, a quarter of the seaweed falls off the platform during growth and sinks 1,000 meters a day to the deep seafloor, where it can remain for centuries, if not millennia. We estimate per square kilometer of marine permaculture, 8,000 tons of CO2 removals, along with 12,000 tons of avoided emissions associated with the reduction in fossil nitrate that's produced, and another 10,000 tons per square kilometer of avoided nitrous oxide emissions, which have a CO2 equivalent around 300 times that of CO2 in terms of the nitrous oxide power as a greenhouse gas. There's a dozen potential markets, but the first one that we've identified really is a biostimulant market, which is a liquid biostimulant that can apply to most flowering crops, and that would include rice as an initial one. We anticipate a three-phase approach to growth, and that is biostimulants first, then the development of biorefineries that can be deployed and enabling local production of biostimulants, and finally the development of and the scaling of the marine permaculture platforms that can increase the supply of seaweed locally when the supply starts drying up. Ultimately, we should be able to address biofuel markets and carbon removal markets and even climate repair challenges as we go, once we understand the role of natural seaweed beds in actually contributing to providing marine aerosols better. So that R&D program is yet to be funded or brought through. The field trials are extremely encouraging. We've done field trials with a number of crops, including Chinese cabbage, where we've got this interesting 2x2 matrix that if you have no additives, you don't get very good results. If you have just fertilizer, you get okay results. If you have just biostimulant, you have even better results. And if you have the two together, you can get the highest results. And we see that time and time again with rice as well as with Chinese cabbage. Here's an example with rice where you can see the improvement in color and the improvement in height and yield of double-digit percentages and the higher yields as well. In fact, if we measure fertilizer-specific yield, it can be 2 to 6 times higher for trials than controls in 2023 across our test suite in 2024. And we had 2 government trials in 2025 that demonstrated yields of 2.5 tons per hectare under controls, with just NPK around 4.5 tons, but over 5 tons with either Vigoro biostimulant alone or with both together. So it's really interesting to see now these government validated trials have demonstrated the fact that biostimulants could substantially replace or at least displace most of the fossil fertilizers that are being used in 5 million hectares of rice in the Philippines alone. So it's an opportunity to make this happen. We're doing convertible notes now and looking to scale this into a Series A for seaforestation.co as a Delaware Public Benefit C Corporation established in 2023. We have a team of over 24 people globally, and these are some of the folks involved. We have the support of dozens of institutions, organizations, publications, and prizes around the world. And we have contact information for those who are interested in supporting seaforestation and marine permaculture. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know, did anyone time that? That seemed like about maybe about 5 minutes.
5 minutes,
like that.
That's right.
Is there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the constituents of big growth? Is it just
70% seaweed. We have some stabilizers to make it shelf stable at room temperature.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Now I don't know who was first. I think Franz, you've appeared first.
My question, it is nitrogen and phosphate. If I'm got it
the
right.
NPK value of the biostimulant is very low. It has an NPK 543%. It's 5% N, 4% P, and 3% K.
And in which form?
It's probably in the form of nitrate mostly. But here's the thing. The application rate is only 1 liter per hectare per week. So it has negligible NPK value in and of itself. What it has is plant growth regulators. It also, seaweeds serve as a prebiotic for plant and soil microbial communities. And we believe it's those microbial communities that facilitate nutrient availability.
Okay.
So it is quite a catalyst. We would call it a fertilizer multiplier in some ways.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brian. Yeah. Robert Tulip, please. Sorry, Sev Clarke's next. Sorry, Sev's next. Yeah.
How do you process the seaweed, Brian?
It's actually a fairly simple cold press, like virgin olive oil. It's a cold press approach. We get the liquid. We can get yields that are pretty good on the liquids, and then the solid dry pulp can be used for feed and food ingredient applications.
Okay, and Robert Tulip, please.
Well, the Strait of Hormuz fertilizer crisis presents a major case study in the supply chain crisis and the need for local production of a range of commodities, and fertilizer as really possibly number one. Like the risk of famine resulting from the Iran war is quite high.
Yeah. I agree with you completely, and especially for Australia and the Philippines and Australasian countries, we would love to get this biostimulant import permit accelerated for Australia and really put this in front of politicians and say, look, this is a food security challenge across Australia. We're, just from the cost, the farmer cost alone, we should be shipping a liter of biostimulant with every, with every sack of fertilizer. And this is something we need to fast track in terms of adoption.
Yep. Okay. And Robert Chris.
Great presentation. I'm going to address the question that you asked, which was how to reduce the number of slides.
Thank you.
For this audience, who are financial people,
yeah,
I would cut most of the first few slides with the science on.
Okay.
Keep them there. If they ask questions, how do you do it? You've got them. But focus on the results and the people, the backing you've already got. Because they are going to want to know about the level of commercial risk.
Yes.
That's where you should put your energy. Keep all the text and all that fancy stuff for the people that are interested in the science. Great. I love it.
Oh, thank you, Robert. Really appreciate that feedback.
And Brew Pierce, please.
Oh, Brew is muted.
You're muted, Brew. Yeah.
No, I'm unmuted. Hi, Brian. Fascinating. A litre per 10,000 square meters. That's an incredibly small amount. How are you actually delivering that?
It's catalytic. We do 100 to 1 dilution, and we can use backpack sprayers. Actually, the best is to get drones. It turns out it costs about $10 a hectare to crop dust with an aerial sprayer, but it costs about $1 per hectare to use an ag drone. And you can put 30 liters on an ag drone and just,
Wow. So the next question is, what are you pricing a liter of the stimulant at?
$10 plus or minus $10 to $15 is the
$10 to
market
$15.
rate.
All right, that's pretty good. And have you tried using that to activate biochar?
Oh, it's pretty good. Yes, I'd recommend the following formula. You take a combination of biochar, compost, and microbial soil inoculation, and then you spritz it with a bit of seaweed, and that could be liquid or solid form. And that would actually, you need a little time for it to incubate, and that can remediate depleted soils. And so we've done research on that with Cornell over the past decade. We have a paper in 2019 with the biochar, the father of biochar. I think what's his name from Cornell. I'll post it in the chat.
Interesting. Are you interfacing with the Seafields team? I've just pulled up their website and see that they're aiming to sell biochar, seaweed stimulants.
Yeah, that's very popular to do the biostimulants. We're really focusing on, I would say, the emissions reduction, the carbon removal, and the climate repair that comes from the biostimulants in particular, and the climate repair in particular with the marine permaculture in general. So we're focusing more on really measuring and quantifying the greenhouse gas and radiative forcing benefits of marine permaculture. So that's our emphasis. I mean, there are other people that sell biostimulants. We want to get it out there, and we're looking at a protected open source approach where we can license communities around the world to produce biochar locally.
Sounds great. I shall keep following. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much,
Brian, can you explain the barriers to importing biogrow from the Philippines to Australia?
Yeah, it's biosecurity protocols, which are paranoid in Australia. It's to the point where I couldn't even, like 10 years ago, I couldn't look at a sample of Asparagopsis from Western Australia because they thought I was bioprospecting. I mean, it was kind of paranoid. But, you know, um, I think there are bureaucratic procedures. It can be done. Our plan is to lodge an application and then connect with Canberra. We might need your help to do that. But if we can say, look, there's this application sitting there and it needs to be, someone needs to come in, an MP or something, and say, this thing needs to go progress pronto, then we could probably facilitate it through the system. I think it's just an overly zealous concern over biosecurity. I mean, these biostimulant liquids are sterile, both in terms of a total alkalinity, pH, and everything else. But they need to be, there's multiple levels of paranoia in terms of, ensuring sterility of this.
I think we can understand that with Australia, Brian, after myxomatosis.
Right. Well, it's easy to demonstrate. I mean, with the pH and with the total alkalinity, the sterility of the biostimulant. But you need to actually reach someone who can understand, understand those technical aspects, proving sterility.
Okay.
Myxomatosis hasn't been a problem, but cane toads and now the varroa mite for bees. I've got bees that are dying of varroa now, which is just newly coming into Australia. Australia's been quite an arc of isolation.
Yeah. And we'd love nothing less. I mean, our whole theory of change is you start with the imported biostimulant, but you very quickly get a local biorefinery and local production, which reduces the transportation cost and carbon impact by 2 orders of magnitude.
Yeah, that needs to be the end game, of course.
Exactly. That's for scaling.
Right. Yeah.
I'll talk to my MP, Andrew Lee. I tried making one contact but didn't get any reply.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's great to have a man in Canberra who can help us to get through.
Our man in Canberra. Yep.
Yes.
Great. Okay, we have 10 minutes left. So next, Alf. So I
That was more of a question, don't worry.
More of a question, and I kind of showed the paper. I think maybe I can send out that yeah, yeah. So let's go to
Although I do think, as a matter of interest, that we should. It strikes me in these conversations that we should sometimes be overviewing all the different potential solutions, some crazy, some whatever. Have a bit of an overview of them all. I sometimes feel that we've got so many good ideas, but we need to kind of put them on the table and compare possibilities.
Yeah, I think Chris Vivian's group has done that
Right.
with their GASAMP report that
Right.
lists the marine, I believe it's the marine solutions of various types.
Back in 2019. It's not entirely up to date.
Okay, but that would be right. I'd like to look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably find it on Google Docs, Google Scholar. Would it be in Google Scholar?
Possibly, yeah.
Chris?
I can always send it to Alf anyway directly.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to Robert Tulip, please. Marine algae for biofuels.
Yeah. So I've been following the podcast, The Great Simplification by Nate Hagen, and one of his key themes is the concept of the carbon pulse, that is just looking at human civilization on geological timescales. There's this sudden extraction of carbon from the crust into the atmosphere, which is grossly destabilizing and which is not sustainable. And what I'm interested in with the use of marine algae for biofuels, my calculation was that with optimal yields, it would be possible to equal the production of the whole global bio-crude oil on 0.3% of the world ocean. And that seems, I find that a really interesting calculation, because I think, people imagine, the oil industry is immense. And so the idea that such a small proportion of the world ocean could be used to equal that production level. But obviously there are the technology and permissions to achieve that don't yet exist, and so I'm particularly interested in hydrothermal liquefaction as having high potential, because it picks up the energy from the whole biomass rather than just the lipid oil fraction. And so I just wanted to mention that as another area where there's a lot of I suppose doom around the the collapse of fossil fuels, and then but the idea that it's possible to replace liquid hydrocarbons with algae produced hydrocarbons, I think has not been given the attention that it deserves.
I agree with you. The HTL process is excellent. There's a challenging cost, but as the price of oil rises, it becomes more feasible to look at biosources. And one of the most intriguing aspects of this is the possibility to co-opt the second 2/3 of the $1 trillion oil refining and distribution industry. And that is the super tankers would no longer go to oil producing countries. They would act like honeybees circulating around to our at-sea biorefineries that would actually produce biocrude from seaweed in the open ocean. And that biocrude would be loaded onto those super tankers, and they would go around collecting bits of honey until they'd gotten full, and they would go back to their refinery, which would no longer be producing fossil fuels, but would be producing biofuels. And those biofuels could then be distributed for jet travel and all the other requirements, including marine use, that would be needed, but it would be carbon negative and climate positive. So that's our theory of change. using the at least 2/3 of the $1 trillion or multi-trillion-dollar investment that's been placed in oil and gas infrastructure.
So just to expand on the hydrothermal liquefaction concept, the way I've imagined it, which is possibly science fiction, but maybe physically possible and useful, is that if you sank biomass slurry to 2 kilometers deep in the ocean at a place where volcanic heat is emerging from the crust, then it would turn into crude oil, and so that's a basic physics. But then the logistics of that are obviously very distant. But if it was assessed as feasible, then the value of it could justify the research. So
yeah, there's a certain amount of pressure cooking can go a long way. It may be easier to just have a high, even a solar powered treatment that would do high temperature and high pressure. With the presence of photovoltaic hydrogen, it can be converted to hydrocarbons of desired length. So that can be done as a biocrude formulation process, well demonstrated by PNNL at the Department of Energy over the past 15 years.
Okay, thank you. Sev, please.
Yeah, it's really hard to harvest phytoplankton, but would be real easy to harvest sargassum when fertilized by my buoyant flakes. And Robert Tulip has just been describing my Winrick hydrothermal liquefaction process, which simply uses a very long pipe within a pipe suspended within the deep ocean and decavitating microbubbles. Now, if you pump down the sargassum into in the central pipe, it's an insulated pipe, the bubbles decavitate and warm up adiabatically, and when a bubble decavitates, it generates an immediate temperature spike of 5,000 degrees Celsius, which is probably enough to hydrothermally liquefy the sargassum into its separate monomers, and then the monomers come up the outside of the tube, and you simply use that as a very dilute oil solution, which you can refine.
Very interesting. Chris Vivian, please.
I'm just wondering ask Brian whether the seaweed produced oil would be fit to replace all of the products that you normally get from fossil fuel oils. I mean, I know, for example, you get these residual heavy fuel oils that ships use. I just wonder whether, for example, you can do the full range of products, because obviously they're not going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, it's a matter of hydrogenation. Different refineries, for example, the U.S. refineries are used to, is it the sweet crude? You've got different refineries.
They take heavy crude.
They do heavy crude. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've got different refineries that are optimized for different approaches. By adjusting the amount of hydrogen that's added, as well as the temperature and pressure, you can determine the length of the chains that are produced in a matter of days. And so it's a combination of temperature, pressure, and hydrogenation that results in the ultimate length of the carbon chains, polymers.
Okay. The other thing I was just going to say was that what Sev described is akin to what was called the ICI deep shaft process, which was basically a sewage treatment process, which used a shaft a couple of 100 meters deep, pump the sewage down, and it, without any nanobubbles or anything, just the extra pressure and temperature, degraded the organic matter very quickly. And it was also used for industrial waste as well. So the concept is quite an old one in concept, but it can be used in many different ways, as Seb's described. And in fact, there are other more energy intensive versions where you enclose the system and raise the pressure much more and to higher temperatures as well, if you've got really recalcitrant industrial waste, for example.
I agree. Now, I think the pressure is fine. I think the challenge is getting sufficient temperature to do this kind of processing. I'd need to see some quantitative results to really determine whether the bubbles would contribute to this. But maybe a variation of that with enough heating at depth would be one possible way to go, if not a steel vessel that could hold the pressure.
I think oxygen would probably help as well.
The Earth is
So, Robert, Tulip, please.
the Earth is a bit like a baseball with a seam, which is the mid-ocean ridge, which runs all the way from Iceland down the Atlantic, around Africa, up through the Pacific, up to Alaska again. And that mid-ocean ridge, much of it 2 kilometers deep, is constantly making new Earth at the temperature that is required for hydrothermal liquefaction. It's the question of whether the logistics of that are feasible. And I think what makes it attractive is the vast scale that you could work at, and just you've got heat and pressure and scale that would be able to create bio-crude.
That's true. I'm happy to report that my father was the co-chief scientist with Bob Ballard in discovering the first hydrothermal vent off the Galapagos in 1977. So it's been a half a century of history.
Awesome. But a lot of them are biological hotspots too. So you have to be careful in terms of what you propose in those sort of locations.
Agreed. It was probably a biodiversity reservoir during the snowball Earth caused by dimethyl sulfide, according to James Lovelock.
Most of those hot seeps are very bio-rich, albeit with a fairly low biodiversity, because they tend to have very few species in vast numbers.
Those sort of worms that eat the sulfur, the stuff. Is that the sort of thing?
Yeah, the
well, it's
synthetic organisms are amazing.
Mussels and shrimps mainly.
Right.
Okay. Franz, I think you'll have to be last because we're running out of time.
Yes, I want to say high temperatures, around about 300 to 400 degrees, makes water like CO2 liquid. And this doesn't dissolve any salt. So you will have problems when you use liquid mixtures and you get clogged by salt precipitation.
Okay.
So you're saying that the superfluid is insoluble to salts that they precipitate?
Water gets rid of its polarity when it is around about 400 degrees or short before supercritical conditions.
You need to flush it out.
The salt would precipitate.
To dissolve the salt again.
Say that again, please, Sev.
You need to flush out the reactor with ordinary water every so often to dissolve the salt. You're right that supercritical water excludes salt and therefore it plates out, but a simple flushing could stop that every so often.
Okay. Did you want to add something, Brian?
Oh, no, that's wonderful. It's good to know about all these aspects and technical details. This group is quite, I would say, a treasure trove of technical knowledge and information, and it's great to discuss these concepts and ideas with all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I second that. Thank you very much, Brian. Okay, everyone, we've run out of time. This will be uploaded publicly onto YouTube. Do spread the word and see you again in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good health, everyone.
Bye.
Take
Have
care.
a good fortnight.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.